Also, so we are so happy to have Theo here with us today. I know I just want to add one thing. I know in your FAQ and your mission, Theo is from Basil Labs, and he's a founder of Basil Labs, a consumer intelligence startup that helps organizations quantify where people go and what they value. Prior to Basil Labs, Theo has worked in the entrepreneurship, data journalism, and open data fields. He earned his bachelor's from Georgetown University and was elected as a 2019 Fulbright Research Scholarship recipient. Woohoo! He's a fan of bridging geolocated data and NLP and produces hip-hop and electronic music on his off hours. We were working very hard to showcase that, but maybe we'll do it at the end. But before I turn this over to Theo, I just want to say how amazing. I know your mission for your project is really answer the one question, what do people value? And I'm delighted and to see today you're adding that geospatial part to it. Not what do people value, but where are they valuing and where are they valuing sharing their opinion. With that, may I turn this over to you?
Hey, thanks so much. So Jen and Amy, I'll share my screen and just dive into it, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
yes, we see everything.
Awesome. Great. All right, so today I think that I started getting into the slides and got a bit excited. So we'll have to go through the timing, and Jen, please let me know if I should speed up or slow down in certain areas, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to talk about data mining and natural language processing, and specifically how can we create new insights with point data. The idea is that everyone's using a lot of the same data sets with census, and that's a wonderful thing, and it's really important. I want to show another way of creating more information from the same neighborhoods and the same places that we're all working with on a daily basis. So, all right, so I'll briefly talk about myself and then about our solutions, and then just dive into some of our ways that, the way that we do our solutions is really interesting. Please feel free to ask questions throughout. I don't actually have the chat up on my side, but Jen, let me know, yeah? And then I'm happy to cover it. Okay. So all of the data sets, and we can send this out later, but you can also scan the QR code or just visit that. I'll add some more data sets to this Google folder, but it has the presentation itself, as well as a lot of links to data sets that I'll be talking about today. So if you want to go ahead and play with data later, it's a good place to go. Okay, so about me. So I actually don't have a GIS background, and I do not have a planning background. I don't have, I am a, yes, I flirt with the space, but my background is in politics actually, and in understanding policymakers. I've been very interested in open data policy for a long time, and I used to work in data journalism, and one of the big things there is just figuring out I need data that other people don't have, because I need to tell a story. And if I don't have data that other people don't have, suddenly I'm just one of many in the crowd. So that's how I sort of got into, can we take data from websites? Can we take it from Twitter, different places? And then can we analyze it? So in the top left, you can see an old visualization of congressional members in 2018 and looking at how they feel about China. And you can see that I think you have the Yulin Lychee and Dogmeat Festival is talked about by Democrats actually. And then you have, currency manipulation is a very cross-cutting issue between Democrats and Republicans. And this is very, it's just looking at how many words are overlapped in people's Twitter accounts. But it's a start of something. I also have a background a lot in doing narrative analysis, and understanding what people say. So a lot of surveying. Jen, if we played the music, then you guys can hear some electronic tunes. But music's a big part of my life, and I'm always trying to, on the other side, contribute and put out open data sets for people, and put out different articles if it's helpful for anyone to go through some code and learn a different approach or the way I've been doing things. So all that being said, it goes into my startup quite well. It's an extension of who I am. I want to find out, I want to listen to communities better, and I want to do it in a way that's not just through the census or not just through long, 30-question surveys that has a very slow, like minimal response rate. I want to get a lot of people involved and a lot of voices involved in our planning processes and strategy for cities. So we have 3 solutions. The first one is where people go. And so this is a pedestrian counter that tracks out where people go, the paths they take on a street. It's all anonymized. So it's only saying that, hey, one person has passed by, right? And this is the path that they took. Our second solution is a voice note survey. This is for people who might have difficulty in typing out long responses or don't have the time during the day. They just talk to their phone. We use machine learning to analyze it, because on our side, with survey background, I don't like reading, really long paragraphs and then trying to classify what are they saying in this paragraph. And so we have a machine do that, and you can identify all your topics. And the last one is an extension of this approach of, can we use machine learning and natural language processing to find out how people feel about places. And so we scrape up every review of an entire city, public spaces, retail spaces, to find out how do people actually feel and think in a place. Okay, so a couple more details. This is a look at our Catalyst platform. This is looking at Long Beach, downtown Long Beach, and looking at the pedestrian traffic day by day. You can find out patterns over time. We actually have a program right now. So if this emoji downloaded differently, it looked very happy on the web browser, but it looks kind of scary there. But if anyone has video footage, we've been working with some ANC commissioners in DC where people are speeding and they don't like it in their area. So people can actually upload footage to us. So just shoot us an email, and then we can actually track out how many people or how many cars are going by. Okay. Second platform, we have Ella. So this is the voice note survey. The idea is we have a very nice lady who's talking to her phone. But the general idea is you scan a QR code, you can set them up all over a city, and then you're able to, people just phone in, like talk to their phone, and then all of that gets quantified for you. And then again, we also have a program for reopening. So we're offering a free survey to any city-aligned organization, nonprofit, who's just trying to get feedback from their community. You're welcome to use our service, and again, just hit us up. What we're here to talk about, though, and why I kind of tried to go quickly through those, is looking at reviews and looking at geolocated point data, people talking about space, and it happens to be geolocated. So I call these community-generated data. So it's data that's geolocated, publicly posted, and user-generated. So someone had an opinion, posted it, right, wanted the whole world to see, and it happens to be geolocated based on a business or based on a public space, or maybe based on where they tag themselves when they're tweeting or Instagramming. Okay. How our specific platform works. The rest of the talk is not talking about the platform specifically, but just generally this idea of community generated data. But the way that our platform works is we'll take in from any data source, Google Maps, Yelp, Zomato. We have stuff over in China for like Basil Labs or Tujia, Airbnb, TripAdvisor. There's more, right? They can keep going on. But the idea is that someone had an opinion, someone left it publicly, they want the rest of the world to see. Can we actually make use out of it? So if someone really, really didn't like the food at a restaurant, that's interesting, but what's relevant to us is more of, did they have problems with accessibility or public transportation when they got there, right? Or when they left? Did they feel unsafe, or, was there bad parking? There's a whole lot of other things that you can glean from any given review that's across the internet. Right? This is how the platform looks like. I decided to not really focus so much on going through the platform itself, but more on some cool things that we've been able to find for the talk. So generally, this is looking at apartments in Dubai. We were solving a problem where a CEO of a co-living space, making these really nice fancy spaces in Dubai for consultants, young consultants, to go live together and drink and, I guess, spend all their money on this co-living space. And so they need to find out, what do people actually value, especially a Western audience in Dubai. So we looked at apartments there, and we were able to actually track out, this is looking at the frequency of how often are people talking about it. This is looking at sentiment, like how positive or negative is the experience. And so each of these is a different topic. And so, for example, I remember that one of the biggest things was the view. People really like the view, not of the apartment, but specifically their room. They need their room to be with a huge window. One of the worst things, of course, especially in the marina area, is parking. It's a big problem for them. And you can actually just break it down here to see what people value the most, what people have problems with the most. Okay, let's go into more of a economic development angle here. So recently, there's more money being dispersed right across the United States, and we want to look at small businesses in outside of the Detroit area, in Wayne County. And so we have Hamtramck versus Northville. Northville is a more affluent area than Hamtramck. Both have retail scenes, and maybe Northville isn't the most, lots of things going on. But I just want to show here what we can do with text data. So if we took reviews, and we did, from all of the businesses in Hamtramck and Northville, I mean, this is restaurants, this is clothing stores, this is banks, you name it, right? You can show that on the x-axis, negative sentiment to positive sentiment. So in the bottom left, we have staff. You look at -1 on staff, bad experience with the staff, right? Then on the right, good experience with the staff. And then on the y-axis, we have a 1 to 5-star review. How was their overall experience? If you actually look at a correlation between those, you can see that for Hamtramck, which is always on the left side here, you have these stronger correlations for staff and family, like family-friendly experiences. So if they were to go and create a marketing campaign for their area, they could theoretically go with staff, right? Because they know that some locations are bad, some locations are good, but overall there's a correlation to overall experience. It's really salient why people come there and how their experience turns out. So they could make a marketing plan off of staff, they could make a marketing plan off of family. Northville, not really so, right? It's not even as steep, so you wouldn't get that much improvement in a 1 to 5-star experience. But it's also not even statistically, significant. It's not a strong indicator to say that this is affecting consumer experience. You can actually see cleanliness is one of the big things for Northville. This data was collected in the last year, so it's COVID times. What's interesting with all of this is that Northville businesses got more PPP money than Hamtramck businesses, right? So if you're saying even for economic recovery, there's an issue there where actually Northville looks like it's harder to market the businesses for recovery to make people come back out. There's a very clear path for Hamtramck businesses, staff, family, statistically significant, strong relationship to the overall experience. Let's make marketing campaigns off of those. It's actually not as clear on how to market Northville as a place, as a destination. So when money gets involved, it's it's good to look into these things. Zooming out, I'll just give a couple of use cases of how this stuff is interesting. Early on in the pandemic, or during the summer, there was Open Streets programs. And so we looked at one in Tampa and we looked at one in Bethesda, Maryland. We found some things that, people were spending more time as a couple, and that was actually going up. So it's a good thing for, I guess, for couples, right, during the pandemic, assuming they have an open street nearby for them to go out to. And then in Maryland, we also saw that people enjoyed the outdoor seating. These aren't really exciting findings, but it's a new way to validate what our hypotheses are, maybe what a survey could show. We can actually just say that, okay, across every single restaurant in this entire corridor that was shut down, people actually had good experiences with the seating. If we go into the center, we see US malls. So this one's actually looking at malls across the US for Simon McCarish and Cedar Properties. And we're looking at places that were recently closed or are at threat of closing versus places that have not said that they're going to close. This is just showing a breakdown of all the different topics there. But the big finding was that in most of the topics, the closing locations had lower sentiment, consumer sentiment, than the places that weren't closing. We actually found that atmosphere for closing was statistically significant, which is interesting because we found that really, really large malls are the ones that close, or not all of them, but the ones that were closing for Simon Properties were larger, with square footage. They actually had really, really good scores for atmosphere. Like, it was a good destination, people enjoyed it, but those places actually had really high, rent per square foot was just higher than other locations. So they made big bets on big locations. They actually did a really good job with the atmosphere, but ultimately, when the COVID happened, it was a bit too expensive to keep up. If we go,
Theo,
go for it. Yep.
So 1 second. So Michael has a question. Michael, please unmute yourself and share your question.
Oh, Theo, thank you. I'm curious with reviews because there's a veracity issue with them. First off, that they are, you don't know who's doing them, and that I believe you can actually hire people to pad your reviewing, and also that I would imagine there's a bias, a sampling bias in reviews towards the negative, that people had a great experience. Or maybe in some ways it's an extreme bias too, that people had just an okay time aren't going to be submitting reviews. It's going to be people that really loved it and really hated it, and probably leaning towards the folks that really hated it. Do you in any way try to compensate for that in your analysis of sentiment from those reviews?
Yeah, it's a good question. Very good question. So for veracity, we don't go and check every single person. We do have scripts that I'm not sure if they're public on our GitHub or not, that look into a couple of different ways that are like academia has taken a look into fake reviews. Fundamentally, the problem with detecting fake reviews is that you don't have a good starting training data set to detect other fake reviews. So one of the best ways to detect fake reviews is the length or the duration of the account, like how long has it existed and how many reviews have you done. I would say that a lot of the topics that we look at aren't necessarily very, so for example, I'm not a fan of looking at the topic of safety because it's not everyone reviewing, and it's very true. But if we're talking about something of just like the lines, anyone can be reviewing it, but generally it's more like a street light is out. Okay, that's good to know regardless of who's reviewing it. So if there's a line, if people aren't using their masks, these are good things to know regardless of who's reviewing. That being said, yeah, we don't actually pad or change or alter in any way. We just visualize what our sentiment analysis shows. But I would say that actually we have a problem where things are too positive. People are, and it depends on the platform for sure, but people are usually too positive with their reviews. And I think you have to do a very good job of parsing out to find very specific topics. And if you're able to find out that, okay, they said really, really good things, but when they were specifically talking about public transportation, they had problems with that, right? So just being able to identify topics and tie sentiment to those individual topics is a good way of creating value out of an extremely positive overall review.
So be specific.
Yeah, be specific with your analysis is a really good way of creating value out of these, out of this kind of data online.
Perfect.
Okay, so yeah.
Now to retail closures,
and
right?
Michael, yes, feel free to people chime in, and happy to have a conversation about it too. So retail closures. This is a good example, right? It doesn't, this is just data that's available online, but it seems to be, less available to a lot of cities that we've been talking to. But you're able to just track out, if you're able to collect data from online, track out which places are closed, which places are open. And we're actually doing some interesting work right now with an organization of looking at language usage and who's reviewing parks. So Michael, I think this is a really good example of, it's not everybody for sure, but it's still really helpful information to have that people are reviewing, for example, a park in Manhattan with 20 different languages versus, places that might be more, English focused only. Yeah. Okay. So those were a lot of examples that are fit Basil CX. I want to talk about just general practices. Originally, I was going to go into a lot of code, but instead, you guys can visit my GitHub. I've posted a nice Selenium template there for people to play around with if you'd like, as well as the web link that I sent earlier. Jen, I can send that again to you, but yeah, I think I'll go through larger practice or like approaches to web scraping and natural language processing and mapping. Okay, so web scraping. If you're thinking about collecting data programmatically online, I think there's more than 4, but I just wrote down 4 here. The first thing that you have to consider is single page applications. So more and more websites are being built with frameworks like React or Vue, and these let you create a page that doesn't, for example, maybe load all at once, right? So you might have to scroll down to access more information. Sometimes it's very hard to identify like where to actually find, maybe I should just show, but how to identify different elements in a page. And so you might want to go with this thing called Selenium. It's a headless browser engine. Is it good to just dive into showing, or should we stick with higher level things here?
Well, how about I'm not exactly sure what the audience might want. How about a show of hands? Where should we go high level if that is where we want to go? Can everyone just do a thumbs up or something? I'll put it in the chat real quick. 30 seconds. Anybody? If it's okay, I'm not seeing fit, but can we just stick with maybe a higher level? Maybe at the end, if we can dive in a little bit more, if that's what we'll have time for.
Cool. So generally, more and more of the web is being built with tools that make it harder to actually collect data programmatically on the internet. And so you can go with different ways of collecting that data. But generally, it's if you look into single page applications, it'll be interesting. If you're looking at collecting information on the web, so this is trick number 2, is that little tricks add up. So if you are collecting information and, for example, you can't collect information too fast because the website might block you. Maybe they have terms that you're going against. It's not my place to say whether it's good or bad to actually collect information from that site, but something like sleep time. So when you're running a script, you might want to just wait for a certain amount of time. You might want to randomize that amount of time because just the amount of time that if you're going to go and collect an entire city is very important. All those little details, they add up. I just saw that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Theo, if we can, I know there are several members of the audience, maybe we need a little bit more direction, including myself. If you think you can go through the tricks 3 and 4, and then we have at least half an hour to dive into the truly nerd-worthy detail. Okay. How's that?
Got you. So step 3 is think programmatically. This is something that I think generally applies to whenever we have interns work on a new project, for example, or even myself. I always have to tell myself it's important to think, what's the most efficient way to get there? It might actually be to take an extra step along the way, but it's good to do that. So for example, if you're looking at a website like, maybe we can do a hybrid here of high level and low level. So if we're looking at something like NPR, right, that's my go-to to see if the web is offline or not. But it might be more helpful right now if it's hard to actually collect each individual one of these titles because they are in different formats. So right here, you might have like, this is an H3 tag, but then you might have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are all in the same exact format, right? And so you can actually collect all of these, but then you need to create an OR statement to actually add this one in because it's just formatted differently, right? So if I wanted to take the title of this and then the title of these next 6 over here, and then the title of this, they're all actually slightly organized differently. One thing you might want to do here is to look at the entire just section of all of the articles here. And so with all of these articles, you can say, hey, script, I want you to go to all of these articles or this section and collect all of the URLs within here. Then we're going to actually go to each one of these, and then we'll go collect the relevant information that we were looking for. So it's probably not as quick as collecting all the information on here, but it actually might be easier for you to code that out rather than to try and collect this one, which has a very unique path. This one who has the same paths as these other 5. This one who has a very unique path as well. So, this doesn't just apply to web scraping, but also to mapping and to other things. There's a lot of ways to get there, but just be very careful about, especially if you're going to run something for a lot of hours, how to maximize your efficiency there. Okay, one more thing I'll say is that if you're looking at Selenium, this is more advanced, but VPNs is something that you can look into. I'll focus on the classes and multiprocessing. If you're running Selenium is very strange in that if you're trying to scrape a responsive site that's lazy loading stuff. So if, for example, if we looked at Airbnb, it doesn't load all the page at once, right? You have to scroll and then it'll load and then scroll, load, scroll, load. So you might want to run multiple instances of this scraper at once. And I'm not suggesting to scrape Airbnb, it's just an example of it loading. But what we have here is if you use create a class and then you use like multiprocessing, and these are libraries that you can just find. All right, you can just use multiprocessing within Python. But then you can create multiple instances of your bot so that you're going through, iteratively, but you also have multiple instances running all at once. Okay, so that's as advanced as I'll get. I always included tools to just get started. So if you just want to look at, and you don't want to actually like learn everything, you just want to collect data, for example. I added links here. So Botsol it has a really good free tier that lets you collect information from different sites. And then so if you're just trying to try out some stuff, you like saw this taught and you just want to do some scraping, some basic like analysis of the text that you collected, and then to map it. Botsol is a great place. You can go into their free products and then collect for Google, or they have Yelp, and then you can find reviews that way. Okay, another one is if you want to look into actually how to do some web scraping, but you don't actually want to learn how to code and everything like that. Web Scraper is a really, really useful tool to get you started. And it's kind of fun to play with. So I have it set up here. And so what you can do is you can create a new sitemap, and let's say that we're actually scraping their website. So I'll just add it here. You can play with, so you can select stuff. So you can play with trying to collect these, right? And then you see how it highlights the other ones. I won't explain exactly how all of this works, but this is another great place to just get started and click around and just figure out like, okay, this is how websites are formatted. Okay, I'm going to go to the next step. So the next step of our process is natural language processing. So I have 3 tips here. I couldn't think of a 4th, but I have 3 tips here to go through how to analyze text once you've collected it. Right. So if we go to, let's say, Yelp.com and let's look at a restaurant. Okay. So they'll have certain reviews and then we need to analyze those. The first tip is that sometimes you don't have to use something really fancy. A lot of times, you know, you might have someone who just got out of grad school, is very excited about the things that they learned and they want to just implement them all. But I'll show you an example at the end of this, but sometimes you don't need any kind of special tech. What you could do is you could just take Botsol, right, or any other application to collect data, and then you could just put it in Excel, and then you can just use an Excel function to find specific keywords. That's actually a really good way to go, and a lot of people who are doing text analysis might just look for keywords. Sometimes you don't need to create some fancy machine learning model or hire someone in order to collect this kind of data. A lot of times you can do it yourself. Step 2 is thinking about bottlenecks and training data sets. So this is getting more detailed again. If you are going to create a training data set for natural language processing, one of the best tools that you can look at is Snorkel. Snorkel is a semi-supervised learning. Don't have all the terms with me, but like it's a great tool if you're trying to quickly create a training data set. So the way training data sets work is you can think about it as in, if we go here, we have reviews. Okay, here are reviews. So we have someone talking about Turkish food. We have, you know, meals, breakfast, and all these different things, right? So one way is you can find keywords in this and you can try and extract them, maybe just with Excel. Find the word and then say, if there's a word, 1, right? And then you can go map it later. But if you are creating a training data set, what that means is that you are taking all this text and then maybe you are splitting it up into little pieces. And then you're going to find, you're going to, you know, put this in Excel and, or you can use a tool, you know, there's many tools out there. And you're going to say, okay, if you're serving food, Turkish food, and then we write in the next column saying that this is about Turkish food, there's no magic to it. I think a lot of people who don't work with machine learning don't realize that there's a huge bottleneck in machine learning where if you want to do fancy, really like cool buzzword things like machine learning AI, you have to go read through a lot of different data, or you have to go hire someone to go read through it and then manually just say, this is about Turkish food, this is about this is about that. And it's the biggest bottleneck when it comes to machine learning. So there's a lot of startups right now who are getting millions of dollars of funding to help with this, especially for image recognition. What is this image? And people will just have to click it. So they make hotkeys to make it very easy to go say, this is a zebra, this is a giraffe, this is a, I don't know what market they're selling for zebras and giraffes, but you know, this is a huge bottleneck when it comes to it. So if you're interested, Snorkel is a great way. Weak supervised learns, you create a bunch of functions. So you're creating different rules for yourself. It sort of mushes them all together, and then it creates a training data set for you. Okay, the third one is geolocated and temporal can be fuzzy things. So actually, if we looked in this, we might be able to find like something like the word morning, nope, afternoon. Okay, in this case, that's a bad restaurant for this example. But when you think of time data, you might think that you need a really special data set that you have to get from the city or maybe from like a data portal that is going to show when restaurants are open and when restaurants are closed, right? But if your challenge is just to show generally where are people in the morning or what businesses are active, you could just look through, you know, choose a platform, Yelp reviews or, you know, TripAdvisor, and just find where people say morning, evening, night, go out for drinks. These are all actually time indicators, and you could be able to map out the time that is most active throughout a city without ever needing a very special data set to show from 9 to 5 at p.m. this business is open. Same thing with geolocated. You might be able to say that, okay, there's only like 2, let's say it's a national park. The national park has 1 review place that you can go. Maybe it's like Google reviews for this national park. You might want to try and find out, okay, all these different things about all these different parts of the national park. And then you think, I need a massive survey, right? Maybe Ella, right? To try and put up QR codes everywhere to get people to scan in and talk. But actually, if you look through the reviews, maybe you'll just find that people geolocate themselves with text. Maybe they'll say next to the waterfall, Okay, this is immediately geolocating it for you. And again, you don't have to use some fancy tools, right? You always can, but you could also just, find the word waterfall, and suddenly you've geolocated that text, and you can create value where there was none before. Two other things that I'll just say about natural language processing. Not everyone knows Allen NLP. I'm not sure why, but if you're interested in sentiment analysis, Allen NLP is a great thing. I think they have the Glove and Roberta models that are just on call for you to do sentiment classification. And then Fast Text, which is made by Facebook, has some really good stuff around n-grams and custom n-grams and how that affects your supervised learning. I don't know why, but not everyone seems to know those tools. I think they're really good ones. Okay, so mapping and data viz. I actually don't have the most technicals, because I know that everyone here is a mapping and data viz wizard with hats. And so these ones are actually more from my journalism side. The idea is that, first one is not too many things at once. I sometimes get excited to put too many things on a map. The second one is just what story are you communicating? And the third one is just, are there patterns to bring out in the data? So that one is actually a bit more technical. If you look at the map in the background, that's looking at people talking about the places they went to before or after, actually via reviews and social media. So someone will be somewhere and they'll say, I was coming from, right? And it's a very interesting thing to show patterns of behavior through text data to find out that someone's saying like, I was here before and now I am here. It's very weird that you can map that, but if you're good about finding geolocation through text, you can actually create these cool visualizations to say that, okay, people were here and then they went to this new place. You can create a pattern where there wasn't none, and you don't even need to track a cell phone, right? Which seems to be very commonplace during the pandemic. You could just take what people volunteer and publicly want to share online. So this map was made with Kepler. If you aren't familiar, Uber released all of their mapping software, or not all of it, but they open source a lot of stuff. Kepler actually doesn't require any coding at all. It's really great. You just drag and drop a CSV file in, and then just drag and drop it. And then you get all the options on the side to color code it, to change things up. And then you can actually save it to revisit it later. So really great tool, doesn't require any coding, makes very pretty maps. Gephi is a network visualizer. It's old, but it's just really pretty. If you haven't worked at all with network visualization, great tool. And then data to viz. And again, the links are in here, but if you want to just think about, visualization and you aren't really sure where to start, I actually really like this website because I even use it sometimes, because it just tells you these are all the different kinds of visualizations that you could do based on your data type. So, okay, I have numbers. These are the things that I could do. And it gives you literally every single kind of visualization. So a great tool there. Okay. Jim, this is the second to last slide that I got. So we have two examples here. One is on the left, we have Dublin. This is looking at where people mention different kinds of transportation using Airbnb data. And so this is actually a website. It's called Get the Data. And you can just Google it, Airbnb. But I didn't use any machine learning here. I didn't do anything. All I did was just look for the word Lewis, bike, and ride sharing. And you can actually use predominance maps using ArcGIS to just show that these are the places where people are using, or at least talking about these things in relation to being a guest and staying in Dublin. And then on the right, we have the same exact thing looking at Doha in Qatar. And you can do the same thing, just look for metro, ride sharing, bus. It was just with Excel, I swear, but you can actually create some really cool geolocated maps using text data. I added a bunch of links of other things that I find useful for different tools and such, some data, some not. So I put that in there also. And that's all I got.